A few years back, I had an appointment to see a doctor for a knee injury. But for some reason, I struggled to find the correct address. I, of course, apologized for being late when I finally arrived, but the doctor took one look at me. I was wearing worn-out clothes and a baseball cap, and he promptly insinuated I was lying in that how could I possibly not find the address? I was mortified, but in that moment, I knew he had made a shallow judgment about my character, all because of the clothes on my back and his own deficit of empathy. I always wondered what his reaction would have been if I'd arrived straight from work, wearing instead my suit, tie, and nicely combed hair. I'm convinced he wouldn't have reacted the same way.
Likewise, a few years later, in a period of my life when I was in constant physical distress and plagued with anxiety, two middle-aged ladies stopped me in my building's elevator and proceeded to attack me for looking so glum. They berated me for not smiling enough, accusing me of ruining their day because they were forced to look at my disparate face. It was such an isolating experience. It has remained part of my self-perception ever since. Being made to feel like an outcast just because of what I was going through, it was deeply distressing. The only way I could have defended myself in that situation would have been to share private details about my existence and my state of health. But I wasn't prepared to do that, so I kept quiet, as how I'm feeling is of course no one else's business but my own. Likewise, what clothes I choose to wear shouldn't have any impact on how my character is perceived, but it does. This is principally the biggest challenge a person with depression faces in society: how to interact with a world that wishes they didn't exist. After all, we all prefer smiles over tears, and perhaps suits over slacks, but the world is loaded with both, and I feel it's time for everyone's perceptions to get a reality check. We all need to take a look in the mirror from time to time. Welcome. Most of us live within defined roles and established positions in our societies, something as humans we've been doing for thousands of years. Wearing a top hat because a gentleman couldn't possibly not, or wearing henna art for that all-important family occasion. We all participate, and with the rise of perfect life-promoting tools such as Facebook or Instagram, we are all constantly being forced in various ways to twist, lie, and distort our own realities to make everything more palatable for the majority. We work to make our lives more attractive, more impressive, more inspirational, but the truth actually lives in the shadows. And through denial or choice, most of us completely ignore our true selves, or at least hide it from view, all in order to interact without fear of judgment or persecution. I was once told that sharing one's inner pain is a totally inappropriate and unfair imposition on the people around me, which, to an extent, I suppose, is true. But it's like not calling the fire brigade for fear of people learning your house is on fire. It's a fireman's job, not his imposition, to help you. And when it comes to people's mental health, society should realize it's all of our jobs to help, to support each other. It always has been. It always will be. Because it could be you, or your friend, or a family member, or our greatest leader. But in certain corners of our society, stigmas remain in abundance. Stigmas against drug users, the LGBTQ, people with HIV, people with black hair. The list is pretty long, and yes, people with mental health issues. A society that promotes fake strength, an unattainable picture-perfect existence, and a level of compliance that hinders both its artistic growth and the well-being of its members, is, at its core, not strong at all, but a society that is measurably weak, as it is just a mask, a mirage, an illusion that sustains it. But no longer should we participate willingly. Be the sheep that looks up. Be what you want your society to exude, whether that's top hats or hand art, or a pain being healed for all to see. Life is both lightness and dark, and denying this in our daily interactions is tantamount to millions of people routinely sticking their heads in the sand. It fixes nothing, and you just become blind, and you look a little stupid. But wait, I hear celebrities talking about their mental health all the time on social media, on all these platforms you're critiquing for being corrupting influences. Yes, but if social media is just an expression of our society's self-perception, how it wants to be seen, are the conversations surrounding mental health, when they do occur, a real indication of shifting sands? Or are they just another means to self-promote and feel better about what we ordinarily choose to ignore? To find out, let us dig a little deeper in It's Time to Talk.
There is currently a severe disparity between pop culture and everyday living when it comes to how mental health is perceived. In pop culture, many celebrities openly discuss their mental health, suicidal thoughts, their struggles in the dark. Frequently applauded, accepted, and liked by millions, they are considered brave, heroic, and true to themselves. And I agree. Figures like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are allowed to have dark times in their lives and still go on to be eagerly employed and paid millions of dollars, and quite rightly so. Outside of this small bubble of public acceptance, though, there is the stark, cold reality of regular life, where future employers cast job applications and CVs to the no pile if there is even a whiff of mental health struggles. But just the night before, these overly judgmental bosses were living it up on Facebook and Instagram, liking and sharing the next inspirational mental health story from Beyonce or Ellen, praising these people for their integrity. If I applied for a job, I communicated I had previously broken my arm, that would not typically affect my chances. Likewise, I could have ongoing back issues that required perhaps the use of an ergonomic chair. Typically, none would trigger the employer to deny me work. The misconception that mental health issues automatically stop someone from being an asset is a notion that needs to be destroyed, ended. Some of the most celebrated artists and creators in human history were chronically depressed. Imagine a world where their potential was denied. The irony is around 1 in 4 people employed in a variety of jobs, CEOs, teachers, doctors, stay-at-home fathers, are all suffering, but still performing their duties perfectly well. The thing most likely to trip them up is actually society, the stigma, the ignorance, not themselves or what ails them. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is strong, inspirational, and a brave person. The fact he has a huge masculine physique is totally irrelevant. I am the same as him, perhaps even stronger. I don't look like it though, and this is the problem. Perception. Will you change yours?
The first step on the road to change is to help each other become more aware of our own frailties. We all sadly judge, we all critique, but rising above this part of the human condition, a part that no doubt suffers from a stagnant evolution of sorts, can be truly transformative. If everyone simply learned to recognize when they can't comprehend something and accepted that fact without prejudice, it could go a long way towards stopping harmful misperceptions before they're allowed to gestate. Essentially, we need to learn to slap the hand that feeds these unhelpful judgments and practice being comfortable with the unknown, with question marks. If you see someone and you don't know how to interpret what they're going through or how they appear to others, either commit to learn more or, for society's sake, accept you don't know enough to pass judgment and give that person the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because a judgment passed against one person unfairly is a judgment passed against everyone unfairly. Societies are products of what we put in them, and if you allow a culture of gossip and judgmentalism to thrive, empathy will diminish and ignorance will grow. But ignorance no longer has an excuse, because in the age of information, mutual understanding can be achieved by just evolving to appreciate when we don't know enough to comment, when we don't know enough to discriminate. Around the water cooler, though, that can be quite challenging. Why is that guy always so stressed? He's so strange. What do you think is wrong with him? What's he hiding? At this point, many of us would allow such a conversation to expand, to grow. Oh my God, you noticed that too? He must be up to no good. Perhaps he's on drugs. But what instead if this happened? Excuse me, guys, look, you don't know anything about this person. You literally know nothing. Every time I've interacted with him, he's been professional and good-natured. Just because you don't get him, it doesn't mean he needs to be got. Exactly. Just because you don't get someone, it doesn't mean they need to be got. And here's another thing. Because societies are inherently and predominantly full of, let's say, sheep, if you're an employer or a person just looking to make friends, shouldn't you actually be looking for the diamonds in the rough and not just for the everyday rocks? When you first find diamonds, they are dirty, covered in muck, having endured a long and painful ordeal in the darkness, all whilst under tremendous pressure. That's what makes them diamonds, their uniqueness. So when you see someone walking down the corridor at work or glumly down the street, start looking at them for what they are, something you don't understand, and very likely, under the surface, a diamond just waiting to be discovered. Change your perception of people with mental health issues. Do it now and do it fast. Help rescue the outcasts, help cure despair, and help create a more empathic society. One where the clothes on a person's back don't prompt unfair attacks, and where the weight on someone's shoulders only garners support. How mental health issues are perceived and discussed depends on all of us. We must speak out when the people around us don't recognize when not to judge someone, and to hold institutions accountable when they treat a weathered life with unfair contempt. And we need to bridge the gap between the aspirational acceptance we find on social media and the harsh reality of the real world. There's more to come on this, but for now, please remember, you are not alone, and this is just the perception of mental health. Until next time.